Actually, JJ Couey's insistence, and I think he's right, on calling them transfections rather than vaccines. Actually, JJ Couey's insistence, and I think he's right, on calling them transfections rather than vaccines.
I have no responsibility for the current pandemic.
I don't care how you get there. I don't care what you do to get there. The goal is to win.
What time is it? Game time! Woo!
Good morning to Howard the Duck, Julian and Julianita, Solar Fire, Sooth, Spider, Fletch, Garden Variety, Human, Brother Spoon, Solar Bees, Atari Mama, My Fauna, and Tazik's Cube. Wow, lots of people in the chat right away in this morning. It's 11:36 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Happy to be here. Keep working to get your kids off of social media. Keep working to get the word out.
We will not call
Brian,
autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged.
As Brian Hooker says, autism spectrum disorder is not really a good thing. It's not a good idea. It's a mythology used to make sure that intramuscular injections never questioned, has a methodology that virology is never questioned as a science, and that public health is never questioned as a reason. The same thing can be said about pandemics and gain of function. These are all myths that we were tricked into believing. We solved mysteries about them. And solving mysteries about these subjects has made it seem as though intramuscular injection shouldn't be questioned or any of those other things. The cheese is for free on social media. You need to understand why. I can't repeat that often enough, and you can't repeat that often enough to your kids. They've told us that AI has solved the puzzle of folding proteins. They've told us a lot of things, ladies and gentlemen, and they've effectively tricked us into ignoring a lot of things about ourselves, about the truth in the world, about our history, and about the history of the people who came up with these ideas and promoted them. Shout out to HousatonicITS.com, one of the best research archive websites and analysts on the internet, let's say it like that. That's about all I can really say for my friend Mark. Doing a wonderful job from Boston, and this is a great Substack I want to promote because one of the most egregious examples of the population pyramid managing with murder is in Scotland. The truth will set your kids free, ladies and gentlemen. The truth will set your kids free. My vocal cords are tired today. They do sound good in my ears, but I think my vocal cords are very tired. They're raw or something. So I'm going to take it a little easy today. Let the fire hose of monkey people do the talking for me. This is a broadcast coming to you live from the United States of America. So long as it still exists in its current form, more and more people are embracing the idea that it may need a new form. Maybe we're going to have a sort of Phoenix event, and Brett Weinstein will be right after all. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been here for a while, you're here at the top of the wave, and if not, you might be a skilled TV watcher, a skilled social media watcher, user who thinks that the truth is being given away for free, and I assure you it is not. You need to stay focused on the biology, not take their bait on social media, and love your neighbor. You don't The voice that you hear is that one of Jonathan Cooey. I'm chief biologist at GigaOhmBiological.com. I come to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the back of my garage. You can find my academic record on PubMed under my last name with my first two initials. You can also find a lot of my work misrepresented on a Substack called Woodhouse 76, which is written by a traitor and a fraud from Chicago by the name of Jessica Hockett. As far as I understand, her husband also owns a restaurant in Chicago, although I do not know the name of it, and I would not suggest that you should visit the establishment. I don't know if they make good food or not, but anyway, that's all I know about her, other than whatever she lied to me with text messages and phone calls until she disappeared. She's just one of the many people that has, in one way or another, come into my life and tried to dominate it, and then vanished. I've had people come to my house over the course of 5 years that altogether cannot be explained. I've been invited to barbecues over the last 5 years that altogether cannot be explained. I've been employed by people over the last 5 years that together cannot be explained. It doesn't really make any sense for all of these things to have happened to one guy. Yet nobody seems to think it's significant enough to do anything about it. It's weird because, I don't know. I got a YouTube channel. That's where this all started. And now I have another YouTube channel because that's where this has gone. It's remarkable because everybody just seems to want to make admissions now on, well, whose team they're on. And it is just one team, like I've always said. And so the only reason why I've been able to say it is because I've got a lot of generous people out there that support the stream with small and large donations. And the end result is that we can pay our rent here in Pittsburgh and we can put food on the table. And that's about it. And so I'm eternally grateful for all those people who have already gone to GigaOhmBiological.com and signed up for a way to support. And I still feel obliged to try and encourage anybody who's been thinking about it for a while to do so, because this is a train that cannot stop, will not stop. But it's a lot more pleasant for me to run the train if I don't also have to work side jobs, which I'm doing right now. It's also a lot more pleasant if I can focus on expanding on the ideas that I have. I have a couple books in draft. I have a couple other things, but I'm not dumb enough to put this stuff on Substack so that their AI chatbots can dissect it and obfuscate it and then recycle it in a million other Substacks that no one ever sees but them. Our own thoughts are being weaponized against us, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they can do because we've acquiesced to using social media as some kind of useful tool. And I can't tell you how important it is to understand that social media makes you into their useful tool. That's what happens. Let's see here. Let's pull this off. Let's switch this over. I need to cut there. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. This is Gigaohm Biological, a high-resistance, low-noise information brief brought to you by a biologist. The captain comes on the screen every day. It's the way I have my... Not even really in focus, I don't think. It's the way that I have my setup here that you can't really see my hands, and I don't really know which way to point because for that camera, it's one way. I'm not a weatherman, and although I do this for a living, I don't call myself a weatherman. I'm actually just a biology coach in the middle of something, and I'm looking to transition into biology teacher for high school kids and for college freshman age kind of people, but younger also. And I think that's I don't think that's a dishonorable way of working, because perhaps the most dishonorable thing to do in life is to mislead the young. And I believe that there are people out there for the last 6 years now that have been paid specifically to mislead adults so that they would mislead their young. And indeed mislead adults so that they would mislead the young. And these people that I've come into contact with, that I've put on my screen, I believe are some of the worst citizens of our respective countries. I think these are people that genuinely deserve to be in jail if you believe that America is a free society, where we live by a rule of laws and that it should not be legal for you to go on the internet and pretend to be somebody you are not, to engage in a sort of long con, which a lot of these people did. And that's the only way to describe it. They are paid to lie about why people died. And one of the ways that people can be lying indirectly about why people died is to be teaching the bad biology upon which these myths are based. And many of the people who are going to be teaching these myths are going to be doing it unwittingly. Like I was at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, convinced that they were covering a lab leak up and convinced that there was some heroic group of anonymous people on Twitter called Drastic that was fighting desperately to get the word out that this was indeed a lab leak and it could be much more dangerous than we thought. And oh my goodness, fear and cleavage site, ACE2 receptor. Now, the point of this is to understand that very few people have managed to get to Camp 4 where they know that not only was one person lying to them, but a group of people were lying to them, and another group of people was waiting to lie to them, and another group of people was waiting to lie to them, and then another group hired them, but they were all lying to them. And it's very easy when you experience this over a long term to imagine that you might be crazy. Unless, of course, even in the casual discussion of the last 5 years, even your sons and your soon-to-be 8-year-old daughter remembers things just like you do. And even remembers things that you don't remember anymore. And reminds you that, remember, Papa, when... And then you realize that you're not crazy. Then you realize that getting this far as a biologist, where I feel like I can comfortably say endemicity is a myth, both as a process and an endpoint, that's a pretty spectacular progression as far as I'm concerned as a biologist, because in my lifetime as a biologist, from being a naturalist as a kid and a bird watcher and a snake collector and a rabbit keeper and this kind of thing, I think the best word for that is a naturalist. I mean, anybody that uses their binoculars just for birds is a birder, but anybody that uses their binoculars to look at everything and has binoculars specifically because you can look close things, I don't know. They're just people who are naturalists that aren't out there for one specific thing. You know, if they find tracks, they can act on it. They find a snake, they can act on it. They find flowers or mushrooms, they can. It's all part of this thing. And that's the real, in my humble opinion, that would be the real biologist that you would want to ultimately become a doctor or become a veterinarian or become a scientist. You don't want any other kind of person to pursue the fine edge of knowledge, because without that humility, the humility of a child in nature, the humility of a child in the face of a collection of snakes under a plywood board that you didn't expect to be there, that kid is the only kid you want to be a biologist. You don't want somebody like Peter Hotez to be a biologist. You don't want somebody like Tony Fauci to be a biologist. You don't want... These are not people who are fascinated with the natural world. These are people who are something else. And the reason why none of these people in the fake health freedom movement have ever gotten here, even if they've been at it for many, many, many years longer than myself. I mean, I would only humbly submit that I knew at all what I was talking about somewhere in year 2022. And I humbly submit that that's pretty pathetic. But the most important thing to understand is that I can now explain to you how it is that, and why it is that what I thought in 2020 is what I thought. I have video evidence for it and slide decks, and there are videos of other people. It's all there. The theater was hard here because this is where the murder was taking place. And these people were coming to my house. These people were offering me salaries. These people were calling me a hero. These people were calling me a genius. The work that they did on me was extraordinary. And I suspect that some aspects of my life are still being worked on now. I think I would be naive to think otherwise. And so we are at a very crucial time point, in my humble opinion, because it is a war of attrition at this point. As long as they can keep everything silent and crickets, and it's still 3,000 followers, and there's still only 100 people watching, and the PeerTube still only gets like 400 hits when it's a big day, will I really keep going? Will I really keep saying that these people are frauds because they make no progress? Will I really be able to sustain that, or will I eventually capitulate and say anything else? And that's what I really have the feeling here. I think that they're counting on the fact that I'm going to finally forget that Nathan died. I think they think I'm going to finally forget that my father-in-law was killed in the Netherlands. I think they're going to think I'm going to finally forget that my friend Annie died. I think they think that Mark is going to forget that his son died. And it's unfortunate, but I hate to tell it to these people. But if you're watching the video, I will never be able to stop. I mean, the best case scenario for you is that I start making this a Friday only show again. So you know what I'm about to say, you know what I have to say, and you know who I'm coming after about this. You know why it's so important to understand that there was a massive biological signal, an opportunity that they took advantage of. You can see it as a necessity, like we've got to manage this problem. You can see it as a economic disaster waiting to happen, so we've got to manage this problem. Or you could see it as malevolently as possible and say that we have this problem. We've fixed the problem. You see, now the population pyramid returned back again, reset again. They need to reset it again if they want to go where they're going, and they will. It will reset itself because of this decreased birth rate here. You see that, right? This is going to be a decreased birth rate right here, because what's happening here, these people are going to get older, right? They're growing up in a world where, there's many, many genders. You don't have to have kids. That would be crazy, especially because of overpopulation and lack of resources. So the birth rate is definitely going to collapse here. The birth rate is going to collapse. They're putting economic pressure on people. Nobody can buy a house anymore. I rent my house in Pittsburgh for $25.40 a month without utilities. And this is not, if you saw the house, anybody that came to the Gigaohm gathering, you know that, by Pittsburgh standards even, this is not, we're okay. I'm not complaining, but that's a lot of money. When I was a kid, when we first moved to Pittsburgh, that would have been a massive mortgage payment. When we moved to Pittsburgh, we were paying $1,500 a month, I believe, maybe even less. And so the United States is going south very quick. And the reality is that nobody is really doing anything about it. We're still arguing about whether Epstein, the second release, is coming. We're still arguing about, free speech and whether or not these dyes are really going to be out of Heinz ketchup in a year or not. This is a remarkable place that we are in, because the performance is now running very thin. This fake anti-vax movement in America needs to come out and become mainstream. Understand, the Democrats and the left, this would be a wonderfully powerful thing to point out to the right that this anti-vax movement is a fake thing. These people aren't serious. But they're not going to do that. because they're all part of this same show. I was going to say much more there, but I don't think it's really important at this point. It is much more entertaining to try and understand how ridiculous it is that being here with a timeline for everybody, right? That's the whole argument that I've been making, that the homework is the timeline. You got to make these people check themselves at the door and explain their own timeline. You don't get to just say, yeah, in 2022, I put out a book. The CDC has a timeline which seems to suggest they set up the opioid crisis that is responsible for 500,000 Americans dying during COVID. I don't know. Sure seems like it. These clowns, same thing. They got to have a Scotsman because Scotland is one of the places where they really murdered a lot of people. So they got to have a very prominent Scotsman out there to make sure that a Scotsman is heard, but that Scotsman never says anything about it. It's just ultra traitors. I mean, ultra traitors. And I think they're all on these two guys' script. I think you can see it, but they're not talking about the CDC, and that's why, because it was sculpted with murder and lies. The murder and lies were set up by the CDC. The actual opioid deaths were also set up by the lockdowns, you see? Think about who suffers from the lockdowns besides old people who already live alone. And so we have this.
Now, what we do have evidence for are these plasmids.
We have this monster running around pretending to be an expert, and he's been doing that since 2020. That's how you can see that he must be a liar. He's an intellectual property expert, and he's probably still an agent for the DOD and for the DOE, the Department of Energy, where, of course, the Human Genome Project is, where nukes are. He knows already that all the things that he's saying are things that he could have said in 2020, should have said in 2020. And most importantly, he's not saying that they're just transfections, just like Brett Weinstein and his wife are not saying, just like Bobby Kennedy is not saying, just like Brian Hooker's not saying. And Brian Hooker for damn well sure knows that they're transfections. We did a podcast together while I was still working at CHD where I explained it to him. And it went in one traitorous ear and out the other, apparently. The guy who doesn't say the word autism in 2013 now says it whenever he's told. And fires people like me whenever he's told, even by Mary Holland. No principles. These people have no principles. After all these years and all this lack of progress and all this hope, they have no principles. And you can see it because they've made no progress. They've stuck to their scripts. They've sold their Skyhorse books. Academics use a methodology called transfection all day long and another methodology called transformation all day long. And that means there's no excuse for any of them to have let this happen except for the fact that these people successfully obfuscated the obvious, which I was fired for in 2020 for saying it. And now they want to make it about the DNA and the shots or the DNA sequencing or the AI kill zone or whatever it is. And it's all irrelevant relative to the base mythology that the PCR works to find something, that we can find anything on a background like that, that the sequencing works high fidelity on a background like that. We can have tests that can find 17 different viral markers for shit's sake, according to Mary Talley Bowden in 2021. Where do you think she is now, using a whole battery of PCR tests that can screen for 100 viruses in total? None of these stories about the contamination, SV40, DNA, whatever, none of these stories are valid. They're all scientifically ridiculous. And they ignore the fact that this one of the worst Americans alive was telling these stories already in 2020, working for them already in 2020. And so these truths remain unchallenged. They remain unchallenged. They remain and also unused. by all of these people. Nobody has made any useful progress other than saying everything's fake, which is not useful progress. I can't stress enough. Throwing everything away, burning everything down to the studs with no plan what to do when it rains, no plan what to do in the meantime is not a way. And it's not going to be a way for our kids to go forward. It's not going to be a way for our kids to successfully extricate themselves from the grip of social media. We need to offer them an alternative explanation. An alternative explanation that will adequately explain why Joe Rogan is where he is, with who he is, doing what he's doing. That will explain who these people are and what they got away with. And will explain what we're seeing now, where the vice president talks about Ohio with the NIH director on one arm and the HHS director on the other arm, where these people with other passports are at the head of our most prestigious used-to-be institutions. We have a problem in America that nobody is acknowledging, that we don't have Americans in these places anymore. And this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous because they're also promoting and being promoted by other foreigners. It's just an absurdity beyond absurdity, and it's happening all on social media. It's being allowed to occur and facilitated on social media. The only way to see it is that America can only be saved if we get off of it. Because this performance, this team can get away with what they're doing. They're all on the same script. It doesn't matter where you go. You will always be on their script. That's why we have a guy like this at the head of the FDA. This is not by accident. This is exactly on plan. Most likely, the reason why they added Robert Malone to the ACIP is so that he would have a valid excuse for being around this man all the time. So that he, whenever they come into the office and they find him sitting there telling this shithead what to do, they can say, oh yeah, well, I was having a meeting with Robert Malone. Do you know him? He's on the ACIP.
Stop lying!
That's where we're at. That's how infiltrated it has become. Now the question is who does Robert Malone work for? Because it ain't us. And so I showed you yesterday that it's very likely 100% sure that Peggy Hall is just some kind of performer that's always been on some RFK team provided script, which means Robert Malone and Kevin McKernan. And so, as I suspected long ago, her whimsical lines and funny anecdotes and goofy words, you know, jabbity jabs or whatever, that was all done to be this safe sort of opposition to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. She was one of those people with lots of views on YouTube who was free, according to the algorithm, to say anything she wanted about the jibbity jabs and to say that, see, Robert F. Kennedy is pro-vaccine. He is pro-vaccine. And so she was just on script. She's always been on script. And if you look at where she was before the pandemic, you don't see somebody who had another idea in mind. She had exactly this idea in mind, to become an influencer, to become a very pretty and attractive influencer and known that way. That's what you see, right? I mean, it's quite easy, at least for me, to look at her timeline and see the people that were in her church were Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Judy Mikovits in 2020. I mean, that's already... Then the way that her rhetoric went throughout the pandemic is just...
Stop lying!
All the time, just this goofy shit, not really saying stuff that mattered, and certainly not making any progress. It's all a performance with these people. It's all very malevolent. And of course, this culminated the other day with her promoting Sam Bailey. And Sam Bailey is, of course, connected to all these super clowns, including this one, which, again, just underscores that it's not by accident. It's all one show. And the only question is whether anybody's willing to accept it, to see it. It's just as simple as Robert Malone and Kevin McKernan coordinating some international social media-based bullshit show. And the bullshit show does some very, very cardinal things all the time. It never questions the virus, it never questions the PCR test, and it never questions the sequencing. And that's the trick. That's why in 2020 he said worst case scenario. In 2024 he says it's still worst case scenario. He's been saying amyloid for a long time, but I think you might be maybe not surprised to understand that fibrinogen is a thing. Fibrinogen is a thing that actually happens. It's natural. To call it amyloidogenic fibrinogen or whatever these people are spooking you out about, it's all bullshit. Just because an antibody for amyloid binds to their clots doesn't make it necessarily a hot signal for amyloid activity or any of this other shit. And the same shit they pull with the prion thing. Stain it with something or use some kind of methodology that's supposed to be a proxy indicator for that, and there it is. And these are all just, this is not serious. This fat, short Englishman that's vaping all the time is not a serious person. And the idea that Steve Kirsch himself offered to send me to Tokyo to work with that jackass means that they're all one team. My phone will show you that. The fact that after my Red Pill conference that Steve Kirsch talked to Andy Kaufman. Now look at these guys. Oh my gosh.
We're delighted to welcome back Dr. Asim Malhotra. Asim, thanks for coming back, mate.
Always great to see you, John.
So much to talk about. We've been looking forward to this for some time. We had communication difficulties now, but we think we're okay at the moment. Now, let's start off with Make America Healthy Again and your role and potential role in that.
Yeah, John. So it's a very interesting story. I think just to give people the full background, how I ended up getting involved in that is...
You will recall one of the most classic moments in Brett Weinstein's illustrious podcast history is when he had Asim Malhotra on in 2022. And if you haven't seen it, please just check it out. You know what? I'm just going to show it to you right now because it's that good. The way that he opens the show is just hilarious because he says that Asim Malhotra is a dissident, but he came to it a little late. Hold on, let me see if I can find it quick. Let's see. Brett Weinstein, Asim Malhotra. 2 years ago, I think it's this one.
Podcast. I have the distinct honor of sitting this morning with Dr. Asim Malhotra, who is a consulting cardiologist, president of the Scientific Advisory Committee of the Public Health Collaboration. So many in my audience will be familiar with your story, but some will not. I know you as someone who has been a very forceful voice in the COVID dissident community, but a late emerging one. Do you want to explain how you ended up as a COVID dissident?
A late emerging one. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so anyway, that was what I wanted you to see. That was funny.
The first person, so my relation, it really starts, essentially, it's all based upon my friendship and relationship with Robert Kennedy Jr.
Stop lying!
As you remember, at the end of 2022, I published this paper in the Journal of Metabolic Health, then Journal of Insulin Resistance, calling for essentially a moratorium on the COVID mRNA vaccine and explaining my journey in that process. Yep. And we'll come back to that as well because I think that's important. But
basically, he killed his dad and then he's sad about it now, you know, like me. Except he won't admit that that's really a sad thing because he wasn't able to figure it out. He didn't have the requisite understanding in biology to know that it was a transfection in 2020 and call it out like I did. There were other people who were saying that the PCR test was a obvious DNA sampling opportunity. One of the people that said that is my friend Thomas Binder in Switzerland. He said that in 2020. It didn't really become obvious to me until early 2021 that this was a testing opportunity, that they had created a remnant stream. And I'm not even really sure that very many people actually understand that that remnant stream still exists, and it doesn't have to be COVID tests anymore. It is the fact that PCR has become a default diagnostic standard, which it should never have been, and certainly hasn't passed that hurdle as a technology. And even if it had, it would still require constant regulation to assure that any future manifestation of that methodology was adhering to the positive and negative controls necessary to be a diagnostic standard. And so again, here we have this poser jackass and poser jackass who are exquisitely unable to see the illusion of the PCR, the illusion of the sequencing, the illusion that was contained in the population pyramid, and how a convenient narrative about a novel virus where we don't really know how to treat the disease would be very convenient hide behind which this murder could take place. And this guy is awful because he is paid to lie about why people died. This guy is awful because he is lying about why people died. Not only that, but he's profiting from it. He is profiting from having pushed people to take AstraZeneca. I mean, that guy is an extreme case of... This guy is just kind of a small potatoes dude. And it's sad, really, that the Maha movement, which is now, I guess, being run by Del Bigtree, has a scientific advisor with such a staged dipshit setup here. Like, this is so fraudulent. The whole thing is just staged fraudulent. Like, wow.
When I published that paper,
this guy is as fake as Doc Malik. Like, they are as fake as one another. It's quite remarkable.
And there was, I was quite disappointed in the sense that I'd worked it up for an exclusive with a journalist in a very prominent British newspaper. I know from my previous campaigning experience, taking on Big Pharma, exposing statins, changing the narrative on cholesterol and heart disease, on changing guidelines on low-carb diets, on sugar, everything that I've been involved in over a long time. That if you get an issue major media attention, it is a massive dent in changing the narrative in a positive way. And for me, I knew that if this was, a story which would have been a front page of that particular newspaper saying COVID mRNA vaccine needs to stop, it would have been game over then, right? And of course, for me, it isn't just about that.
Now, don't forget that I published a COVID vaccines need to be paused in May of 2021 under the control and infiltration of one Piper Stover, who was likely sharing all the drafts of that review during the whole 5-month process before I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to fucking publish it because I'm tired of this shit. We're drafting it too much. We're changing it too much. It really took that long for me to finally put my foot down. And I think that after Mark's careful work on Piper Stover, I think it's pretty obvious that she's not who she said she was. It's pretty obvious that I was being played. It's pretty obvious that I was a dumbass back then. And she handed me off to Brett Weinstein, who then continued to play me until I was handed off to Matt Crawford, who continued to play me, until I was handed off to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who continued to play me, or his staff continued to play me, I should say. And then I was handed off to Mary Holland and Brian Hooker, who continued to play me. And I was also handed off to Jessica Hockett and Nick Hudson during that time. So I'm just bewildered at how many people have been paid to lie about why people died and have specifically been paid to somehow or another interfere with my ability to provide for my family. There's a lot of people that I would be very justified knocking out. And it's not a joke. Like, in any real human society, it would be totally justified, and the audience would stand up and cheer for these people to be knocked out, especially by somebody like me. If they came to your house, if they texted your wife, tried to get you to tutor their daughter or coach their husband out of divorcing them, holy shit, you might be pretty pissed if you found out that was a lie. This guy ran away from me at the CHD conference in Georgia. It was hilarious. Twice he saw me. Twice I tried to raise my eyebrows and say hello to him, and he just, sped past. And the final time I saw him, and I just stopped him. I'm like, hey, Asim, don't you think we should take a selfie together? And he said, sure, what the heck? He knew exactly who I was. You know he knew who I was. He was on stage with Robert Malone, Meryl Nass, Sasha Latipova, and Michael Palmer in January of 2022 in Stockholm, Sweden, telling everybody that this was fifth-generation warfare and we would never figure it out. This guy was on stage with Robert Malone, one of the biggest American traitors alive. And now an ACIP member under Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Malone, probably one of his chief handlers. We are in a very dangerous position in America, and there are puppets all around the world that are all participating in this controlled demolition of what essentially is England and America. Like it or not, England is being destroyed from within as well. By immigration, and your NHS is being destroyed, and your old folks are being euthanized, and that's normal in your situation. So what's happening in the UK is a controlled demolition of the UK as well. And I would be willing to bet dollars to donuts that whoever's doing it in America is the same people who are doing it there. I don't know where else they have a good handle, but the UK and the United States are being destroyed. The primary English-speaking people that, that are willing to fight over soccer games are allowing and football games and hockey, we fight over hockey. But when it comes to the destruction of our nations, we just watch it on news. We just watch it happen. Canada may be also being destroyed, indeed.
Personal motivation, to doing something successfully. It's about the bigger picture and saving lives.
Yep.
And it didn't happen, right?
At the end of the day, you're a doctor, you're a cardiologist, and the reason that we're so keen to have you on is I completely believe that is your motivation. We have the same motivation. We want to relieve human pain, suffering, and death.
100%, John. That's why most of us, 99.99% of doctors, nurses, people going to the health, sector, do it from that position of relieving human suffering. That's what we are called to do. It's innate within us. We're not motivated by finances. If we were, we'd be doing other jobs. Doctors are usually the people that, let's be honest, do the best at school and medical school, that kind of stuff, while at school. And therefore they could choose going to banking if they want and make millions, but they don't. They do it because one, there's an interest in the topic, but ultimately it's about, it's a very noble profession. So that was what I
see. So I didn't even mean to do that. I guess somebody put that in my head. But, these people don't go into being doctors for the right reasons. They don't go into it with the humility that they should go into it. They go into it with the idea that it's a noble profession, that it's respected. They want to be respected in the community. So they are going to choose between being a doctor or a lawyer. You see why it sucks? Why doctors suck in general? Because it's not the right people who are encouraged to or choose to do it. That's the first failure there, is that we don't nurture this humility and this love for nature in our children enough to get doctors in general that are the right kind of doctor. The doctor on Little House on the Prairie is a better doctor than any of the doctors in Pittsburgh, probably.
Was clearly, motivated by and very disappointed when it didn't make the news and the mainstream. I had to think outside the box as an activist. So I managed to get it, I think, in a Spanish newspaper, in the Times of India. So, okay, well, let's just try this. We're in a global world. Anything we can do to get it.
Interesting that he got his article in the Times of India. Huh. That's pretty good for him. Right on.
Out there in some platform, it has a knock-on effect, has a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
And at the time, because I had a good relationship with them, I went on GB News, and it was Dan Wootton's show at that point, right? Who wanted to do it as a main story.
Yep.
And obviously there was a lot of attention.
Yep.
And I come out of the studio of GB News, And the first person to call me, and he got my number, I understand, from Robert Malone, was RFK Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr. I'd had no interaction with.
Holy shit! He's telling the same story that apparently I must be full of it then, right? Because my story is that in April of 2022, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. called me in my front lawn in Pittsburgh and told me that Robert Malone sat him down and made me watch my stream with Charles Rixey, and he wanted to help me. And the same phone call I got from Ron Johnson on the same day said the same thing. And now he's telling that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. got his number from Robert frickin' Malone. That means that Robert Malone knew him before Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did. Oh, I'm so frickin' sorry, but that's a giant admission that you were recruited by Robert Malone in the first place. And it's a giant admission that I'm right, that Robert Malone is actually driving probably Meryl Nass, and therefore was for a long time indirectly driving Children's Health Defense and Mary Holland and their science whatever as an advisor, until Robert Malone just decided, I think we better just bring Robert Malone on the field. And so we'll have him publish a book with Skyhorse, and we'll have him be a reader for the Wuhan cover-up book until, Jonathan Cooey says he's a traitor. Well, then we can take him off the reader list, but that doesn't matter. We're going to fire Jonathan in a little while anyway. So, yeah, this is bad.
With him before that. I think he'd been following me maybe on social media, but I had no direct interaction with him.
He started by saying this all goes back to my friendship with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It sounds like so far his friendship with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is about as deep as mine. Because Robert Malone is the one who set us up too. It's crazy. We have a friend in common. Isn't that nice?
And he gave me the most encouraging words. I remember the very first words he said to me. He says, Dr. Malhotra, Robert Kennedy Jr. here. I want to thank you for your courage. Right?
It must have knocked your socks off getting that call straight from...
It was.
Funny, huh? That's the same story that I tell at the Red Pill conference. I mean, it's the same. It's my story. It's pretty remarkable, I think, actually. I mean, it could just be a coinkydink.
It gave me a lift, actually, John. It gave me a lift because I was in a position where I was like, I'm doing something where I was told by my friends, by colleagues about what I was about to do. They said, Asim, you're going to get struck off. Don't do it. You're going to get struck off.
The personal risk here is
What does struck off mean? Does that mean you're going to get killed, or does that mean you're just going to lose your license? This is so dumb. This is so pathetic. It's such an act. These people are just acting for the national security state. They are part of the same illusion that is destroying America. It's the same illusion that will destroy the UK. It's the same illusion that's going to destroy Scotland. It's all of the Anglosphere. Everywhere where English is spoken, people are going to be destroyed by these people. And these are some of the worst actors in the UK group. His coincidental overlap with the Indian story, with the Indian Times and his Indian family. I'm sure it's all a coincidence. I'm sure.
Real element.
Yeah, I knew it was the biggest risk I was taking. Although having said that, to be honest, in retrospect, in a different way, doing what I did with the COVID vaccines in some respects is a walk in the park in comparison to the decade of relentless persecution I've had over statins, right?
So now he's going to claim that for a decade he's been telling everybody not to use statins.
Stop lying!
Wow, that is some shit. Because what he's kind of glossing over there is that in between there was this time when you told everybody to take the frickin' vaccines. Like on TV, on BBC. This is a guy who should feel so bad that he shouldn't be comfortable doing what he's doing now. That's what I think. And you shouldn't see a good man who can do what he's doing now, given the fact that his father behind him is dead because he advocated for this technology. to say that, oh, I guess I was wrong now, he's still got to work that out with his family. Never mind with the perhaps thousands of people who might have taken it because of the same advice that he gave his dad on TV. This is like scum of the earth level shit here. We always knew that this guy was scum of the earth level dumb, but this dude is really, he's setting new records, and like, you know, he's helping him. He's standing on his shoulders. So, you know, it's a real high jump record for these jackasses.
Still, you know, being a big issue. But anyway, so, but I was in a position to know what might come my way. But I thought medical journal, etc. So he'd read it. He then basically got me on his podcast. So we did a big interview. I then ended up meeting him.
He did a big interview. You remember my interview with the Defender, where I was supposed to have an hour, but then a day or two before the podcast, I was called by his nephew, and his nephew said, "You're going to have 7 minutes, and we're going to bring on Robert Malone and Meryl Nass and Jessica Rose and Tess Laurie, and they're all going to talk about your claims."
In America, I go to, you know, a bit of a speaking tour, which was, instigated by Steve Kirsch, right? So I go to America, I do Tucker Carlson, I meet Bobby Kennedy Jr. in Malibu in an event which was organized by a guy called Tony O'Donnell, who Mel Gibson was there. It was really extraordinary, the people.
Mel Gibson. So you see how it works, right? They tried to do the same thing with me several times, if I look back on it now. Sometimes when I look back on it, I actually get a little scared because I don't know anyone else who has experienced what I've experienced, who's been in all the Zoom meetings that I've been in, all the streams that I've been in, all of the discussions that I've been in, all the steering committees that I've been on, all the staff meetings I've been in, and all the times that I've been fired or been completely ignored after being courted. I mean, Piper Stover used to text me in the morning every day, then after my stream, then tell me what I did on my stream, then look at a draft of the review, then say, wow, you were awesome, you know, whatever. Then they vanished. Then somebody else came into it happened over and over and over again. And all of these people at one point in time told me that I was great, told me that they were a big fan, told me that they watched what I do, have read what I've written. I can't make it up. I'm one of the only people on earth who knows how the UK and America are being subverted, how Canada and Australia and New Zealand are all being subverted by the same assholes. And there are traitors in every one of our country that participated in it. New Zealand, Australia, America, Canada, the UK. There are traitors in every country that participated in the Robert Malone and Kevin McKernan show. There are also traitors in South Africa that participated in this Robert Malone, Kevin McKernan scripted traitorous show. And collectively, they work together to reinforce each other's narratives in their own home country and in other countries in order to make sure that no useful dissident ever rises on social media. And with the help of the programming of these platforms, it is a flawless accomplishment. He's so confident he will flaunt his gold plaque from YouTube, his platinum plaque from YouTube. And this guy's just hoping he gets one.
They came to hear me speak, and Bobby, etc.
Joe Rogan, of course.
Joe Rogan was much later on, yeah.
Was
but
it?
He got on Rogan too. You see, this is not by accident. We are in a trap.
Yeah, it was much later on. That's where we started connecting. And
much later on, we're talking about 2022 onward. We're not talking at all about what happened in 2020 with AstraZeneca in the healthcare community of the UK. We're not talking anywhere about the use of lateral flow tests in the UK to define a bullshit pandemic. We are not talking about anything in 2020 at all. When the murder started in Scotland and in the UK and didn't end until 2020, they're not talking about anything relevant. We're talking about time after all the people that were going to take the shot took it. After everybody was already effed. Oh, that was a long time afterward. There's not a lot. You're skipping the most important part, the 2.5 years where people were murdered. And they're doing it because that's the script.
In fact, when I spoke, I referenced both JFK, his uncle, and Robert Kennedy, his father, in terms of, fighting injustice, quotes to those effects.
Yep.
And I remember walking off the stage and he basically gave me this big hug. And I went away the next day. His team were dropping me to the airport. And I said to him, this guy needs to run for president. And he looked at me as if I was mad. I said, no, he needs to run for president because I said, this is the right time. We've got the right person. He's got the right skills and knowledge. I met him and he literally, he's someone that does turn heads when you walk in. He has got a presence when he walks into a room. Yeah. He's got the X factor. Yeah. He really is. And he's extremely intelligent and knowledgeable.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got the genes, he's got the integrity of certainly what most people know about his uncle and his father.
And the pure,
so
the
for
pure,
me, I was
the
like,
pure energy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, just
this is the right person at the right time.
Mm.
And interesting. And then we had some email exchanges. I sent him an email. There's a great documentary. If people haven't seen it, I urge you to watch it on Netflix called Robert Kennedy for President, about his father. It's very powerful, very moving. I've seen it 3 or 4 times. There's several episodes. I actually emailed him and said, have you seen this, by the way? I hope you don't mind me, And he acknowledged it. He didn't say whether he'd seen it or not, but he acknowledged it. So we were constantly in interaction. And then, of course, he announced he's going to run for president.
He acknowledged it. So, of course, we were in constant interaction. I wonder if he can count the number of times he communicated with Robert F. Kennedy on one hand, because I bet he can. I was on a Zoom meeting with him in the middle of the night once to write an article about Charles Rixey and Andrew Washburn. Yeah, Alex Washburn and their discovery of the no-seum technique indicators, the restriction enzyme sites. And that article on the Defender was written in the middle of the night. And it's really funny because the only thing that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did in that whole writing experience was come on the Zoom meeting in front of a couple other staff members to tell me that I was a terrible writer. It was pretty funny. And so, yeah, it's in retrospect, I don't think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a genius. I don't think he's really knowledgeable. He may be really knowledgeable, but it's a different thing than like being clever and smart, which I don't think he can be. I just simply, like Elon Musk, I've just never heard anything profound come out of his mouth. I know that he has read profound words. I know that he is purported to write profound words sometimes, but I don't think that necessarily means that he can put together words in combinations which create new ideas. And that's really what intelligence is all about to me. It is about using language to make people think in ways that they have not thought before. And quite frankly, I don't see anything about what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has done in the recent past or more distant that suggests to me that he himself was articulating the words that were changing the world around him. That's just not who he is. These people are all scripted. And they because they are improvising through the script, and this is a key thing to understand, because they're improvising through the script, they attribute some of the a too significant portion to their own role in the script. They overestimate their value as actors on stage, in other words, because they think that they're reading this script in a way that nobody else can read it. And that's why they're so valuable to these people. And that's all played in here, right? That's why Mel Gibson needs to be at the party. Maybe that's why they had Rodney Mullen come to my house in 2020, or maybe not. I don't know. The point is that it's to put you in a disarmed state, so that, you know, you meet Mel Gibson, you're starstruck, and then Robert Malone shows up and says, "See, this is the real deal, man. This is the shit, and I'm gonna show you how to make this your life." That's how it works. He can be an unwitting participant and just an idiot. That's possible. This guy can be an unwitting participant. He's not that clever. If you've watched any significant portion of his work, he's not that clever. And it's pretty easy to see that, you know, he would be very willing and able to be a scripted rather than to be some kind of free-thinking guy. He's not a free-thinking guy. I don't know. I can't explain what he is, but he's not real. And this dude is so busy in his own mind with trying to make sure that the person that he's talking to right now in this moment, whoever it is, believes him and attributes good things to him, principles to him, that he spends most of the first, you know, minutes or hours of his any talk doing that, justifying that he's really the guy he says he is. That's what I see here. I don't see someone with a message.
I go to America, and we're making First Lunar Farm, which you obviously have seen.
Yep.
And at this point, part of that story was we wanted to. I literally was backing him to the hilt, and helped organise an event with a brilliant man in Australia you might know called Adrian McRae, who's now become a politician over there, but a very wealthy guy, who essentially funded an event in San Jose.
So he's hanging around with a bunch of rich people who are trying to influence elections all over the world. And they're using a fake health freedom movement to associate themselves with these ideals of health freedom and win elections. Just like Polly Tommy did with 90 billboards in her bra, swaying 6 million votes for prime minister in the early 2000s. So it's become a global grift now, where social media provides the medium and gives people like him power in many different political arenas, even in different languaged political arenas. And that allows social media to become powerful across borders, essentially by building a network of international actors. Social media has been elevated to international significance. And that is really by design. That may be one of the things that they have primarily accomplished here, is demonstrated the power that social media can have on a global scale, and maybe reorganize the way that our ruling elite think about governing us, because they realize that they now have a kind of control mechanism that they didn't have before. You know, scandals in America are scandals in America, but now if it can become a global scandal all the time, a global crisis, a global narrative, then global governments can be more easily manipulated with just a few insiders. And I don't think that's by accident. I think that's why these people are so internationally promoted, because the idea is not to promote their ideas or these people internationally, but it is to force the relevance of social media to become international.
For his presidential campaign. And it was Dr. Drupinski was the moderator. We had John Shipton, who was Julian Assange's father. We had Vandana Shiva, who's a great food agriculture activist, amazing woman.
Oh,
and
yeah.
myself and Bobby. All of us were the speakers. It was a big event. We were up on billboards.
So he's not going to tell you about the big event in 2022 in January before he met Bobby. He was on stage with Sasha Latipova, Meryl Nass, Robert Malone, and Mike Palmer of the Doctors for COVID Ethics in Stockholm. So of course Robert F. Kennedy Jr. got your number from Robert Malone. Robert Malone screened him already. Robert Malone met with him in a foreign country. Not in the UK. They met in Stockholm, Sweden, with Meryl Nass at the hotel. Isn't that awesome? Sasha Latipova was there too. I wonder if Soph went along.
near San Francisco about this whole event happening. So that was also something else I supported him with. And so we were constantly in communication with each other. And then, of course, he decides that he's going to align with Trump, and then the election happens. And I have no doubt, John, that the key factor from everything I was observing and speaking to people on the grassroots and being for months in America, the key factor, I think, that helped Trump win the election was Robert Kennedy Jr. John.
Being months in America. Did you hear what he said? Being months in America. Did you hear what he said? Being months in America.
I agree completely. I think Trump recognizes that with the way he's respecting him at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think that gap that was created in particular between him and Kamala, which people thought would be very narrow, was primarily driven, John, by people's concerns around what happened with the handling of COVID and specifically the mRNA vaccine.
Yeah.
So when all that started, I'd also interacted, I'd met...
Hello. Welcome to the show. We're on the back half here. We're going to make this go quick because I got to go to the gym around 1. 71 people in the chat, though, or in the viewing. I don't even know what's going on here. That's got to be a fake number. Wait, no more Allman Brothers. Sorry about that. Didn't click over there. Great to see you guys. Great to be here. I'm really happy. I started the show with a little Nurse Campbell and Asim Malhotra because I think those guys are pretty easy to accept as meddlers. Nurse Campbell's record on the internet is it's appalling. And his limited spectrum of debate on the RNA as coordinated by that other old white guy who's been on a lot of shows, it's just atrocious. That guy actually was also on Brett Weinstein's show not too long ago. So this whole obfuscation of the real simple truths about what they know and don't know about transfection and why they could have never expected it to work is going to be obfuscated by detailed stories about immunology and autoimmunity and all this other stuff with details that don't matter, because the details aren't the issue. The detail is that they didn't know, but they did know. They didn't know what it would do, but they did know that it would hurt people. And that's really the trick here. This team of performers is there because they were recruited and took money to lie about why people die. And not only is, I think, somebody like Peggy Hall, somebody who does that, but I definitely am sure that this absolute fraud, Dr. Drew, was he at the Brownstone thing in Pittsburgh? I can't remember anymore. But that guy is remarkably fake. And another guy who's remarkably fake is this dude here. This, let me just say, this gentleman. He actually came up to me at the Pittsburgh Brownstone meeting during a break, and without introducing himself really or asking me who I was, he immediately insinuated that I wasn't having a good time and that I should be careful not to encroach on anyone else's good time. Something like that. It was very bizarre. He really did come over to, I guess, attempt to warn me. I'm not really sure. It was kind of the same thing with me being in a conversation with somebody there and having Brett Weinstein come up to me and hold my name tag for a minute and then walk away. I couldn't really see him because he's so short, so I know it was him, but because I was looking at somebody else, I couldn't look down to see what he was doing, but I could feel him touch my name tag on my waist. These are tiny, short cowards who only look normal sized on the internet or in a movie screen. That's like Tom Cruise short, you know? They have to cast people around these people to make sure that they don't reveal how ridiculously short they actually are. That's one of the things that happens around Tom Cruise all the time. They also, lower this person or whatever to make sure that you don't see that everyone else is normal, but Tom Cruise is a tiny person. And I think that, to a large extent that happens on the internet. And that's why people are very comfortable on the internet and very uncomfortable when they meet me in person. It's without exception that everyone that meets me is like, oh, wow, I didn't expect you to be this big. Steve Kirsch said that to me at a Broken Science meeting. Pierre Corey said that to me at a CHD conference. Even Ryan Cole. All of these people are... even Andrew Huff said that to me in the door of the hotel where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was announcing his presidential candidacy. When he was going out, I was going in, and he just said, oh my gosh, I didn't expect you to be this big. He didn't even say my name. He just looked me in the eye and said, oh my gosh, I didn't expect you to be this big. These people are pathetic. And they have table meetings about some guy in the back of his garage in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because I'm wiping the floor with them. And you can see how it is that it's happening because they're not actually talking about biology. They're not actually making progress intellectually with their messaging. They're not able to teach more people efficiently. They have no elevator pitch that has evolved over the last 4 years because they are frauds. And so
the World Health Organization has got its hand in a lot of the things that pediatrics do these days. Can we disentangle that?
So he starts, sorry, I'll leave that go.
Immediately.
He starts with using a clip from March of 2025. And of course, he's going to sell stuff, and he's selling stuff on the back of having interviewed the Health and Human Services Secretary of the United States of America, that brilliant man, that articulate, brilliant man who, you know, just blows people away every time they give him the mic. So if we look here, we're going to talk about the birth rate implosion. So we're not going to talk about the population pyramid at all. We're only going to talk about how maybe the COVID shots are causing some birth rate implosion. Yeah, it couldn't be due with anything else, because that's all they talk about. COVID shot bad, 2020. Now, what's interesting about this before we go is that in this talk, we're going to mention Brett Weinstein. We're going to mention Sasha Latipova. We're going to agree that these people have a lot to contribute to the current narrative about DARPA and DOD or something like that. And so the pathetic nature of the script and the pathetic lack of depth on their own bench of performers is actually now it's the end. It's the end. They don't have anyone else but that shithead Sasha Latipova. They don't have anybody else but that shithead Kevin McCairn. They don't have anybody else. And so that's all they can promote. They can't say somebody else's name because there's no one else on the bench. And if the conservative movement that was manipulated by these people does not wake up soon to realize the extent to which they have been manipulated, America will be dissolved by their ignorance. The same ignorance that is present on the left in a different form. This idea that there's a good team and a bad team and good guys and bad guys on social media. It's not that way. The only good guys that you can possibly find in the world are alive and will rent a car with you or share a hotel room with you or can have a conversation with your kids and their kids in the room together. Those are your neighbors. Those are your teammates. Everybody else is an imaginary figment of your imagination present only on your phone. And until you actually start to comprehend that, you will still be trapped by this illusion that makes this jackass somebody real. Come on.
Because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin, ridiculous.
I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that?
I'm just saying. You go to
I'm a doctor for... You can tell by how they talk. You know, I'm not a real hardcore about this stuff, but I would rather hear any other word than, somebody using the phrase, Jesus Christ, man. That just sounds so dumb. It just sounds so naive. It's like, if you were to curse with the word Muhammad, curse Muhammad or something like that. Why would you choose to say that? That just sounds so dumb when the the English language has so many very tasty, nasty words like cunt and fuck and all this other stuff that you can say and everybody feels the grind in their head. But that when somebody is on TV and repeatedly over and over, the only swear word they feel comfortable with is Jesus Christ, that's just stupid. I don't understand that other than malevolence. It's yucky. It's wrong. It's dumb. And it shows scripting. Because if you were really, really trying to be a gentleman and a professional, no one ever goes there. I guess if you get surprised and that's what comes out of your mouth, I'm totally fine with that. But if that's just something of how you talk when you're in a suit on stage with the lights and cameras on, that's scripted. That's scripted bullshit.
treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take my.
And so, again, if you think in the context of the FDA being the problem that these people are trying to solve, and then you think about how many of these people are selling things all the time, these are all things that are not evaluated by the FDA, that are not approved by the FDA, that for one reason or another, the FDA would technically be in the way of them being able to make more money. This is the health freedom that they are fighting for. An unregulated supplement market. That's what they are, the health freedom that these people are fighting for by reading their discount codes for all of these products. And Kim Iverson does it. Brett Weinstein does it. Dr. Drew does it. I mean, everyone does it. Every one of these people does it, except for Mark and I and Joe Marshall. We are all supported by our viewers. That's it. Joe Marshall's not even supported by his viewers. Joe Marshall's got a job. Mark's not really supported by his viewers. His show is. The rest of his life is supported by a hard-working wife. These people are frauds with Substacks with 45,000 subscribers. Even if a tenth of those people pay, this guy is a fraud and a grifter and a shithead.
It's Danish on X, also Vibeke Manika on Instagram, and the same thing. The website is vibekemanika.dk. Jeffrey Tucker, on the other hand, is quite a bit more easily remembered and executed. Jeffrey Tucker on X. That's that, and jeffreytucker.me. Jeffrey, welcome.
Sure.
Thank you for making that easy.
Sure.
So,
No, it's oddly though, I think you made a mistake. I think it's Jeffrey A. Tucker.
Yeah. You're correct. It is Jeffrey A. Tucker on X, and it's Jeffrey Tucker on the website. So yes, okay. Well, I would have.
So again, one of the stunts that you should see here is that this conservative movement was brewed up and controlled largely by X. And one of the things that these people are being paid to do is create the illusion of relevance for X in as many of these countries as possible. That's why the debate happens there. That's why they post there. That's why they promote themselves there. And that's why when they hand out their social media, this guy only hands out X, because Brownstone was set up. He was probably set up by the people that are using X against us. And it's not Elon Musk. X is a military program, just like Facebook is, just like all of these programs are. And they put that shithead in front of you and say that Elon Musk is running it or controlling it or bought it. It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. Just like Jeff Bezos is using a military distribution program and optimizing it and then pretending like he's the businessman with the bright idea. It's just bullshit. Steve Kirsch did not invent the optical mouse. I mean, come on.
To send everybody over to Jeffrey Tucker, so good for you that I didn't do that.
Yeah.
So you seemed a little downtrodden today. Is something come through that's got to you? I know Brownstone is in the crosshairs, but as one publicist said to me the other day, she goes, "Look, if you're not in the middle of a shitstorm, you don't exist. So congratulations, you exist."
I suppose that's one way to look at it. I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's all so predictable and so preposterous. I just got through reading some article on ABC, NBC, and MSNBC, I don't know, one of these things. And they're wailing and whining about the new ACIP committee, which is the advisors for immunization practices that works with the CDC on vaccines. And RFK got rid of the 17 members that were heavily conflicted. We documented that today on an article for Brownstone. They're basically working for vaccine companies, failed to recuse themselves and votes on these pharmaceutical products that, even though they're working for the same companies that are producing the.
I mean, this can't be possible, right? This conversation was happening already 10 years ago. Now they just have a different dipshit saying it to you. There's no progress here. The ACIP is conflicted. Now he's replacing the people on the ACIP with a bunch of people that were, again, they're conflicted. They're conflicted because they are part of this controlled op, this fake health freedom movement. And all of them, Kevin McKernan in the video that I didn't play the audio of was promoting one of them, Retzit Levy, a guy who's from MIT and plenty smart. I'm sure he's smart enough to know that there's a population pyramid out there. I'm sure he's smart enough to know that that needed managing. I'm sure he's smart enough to know that if he went to that Scottish blog, Phenomena Phenon, or Biology Phenomenon, whatever it is that I promote in the beginning, that he would be able to see that something really gross and disturbing happened in Scotland. But he's not going to do that. Instead, he's going to stick to the COVID shots are bad, don't talk about 2020, just like these two morons. These are despicable traitors to American grandkids. These are some of the worst Americans alive because they are frauds. They are faking it until they make it, and they think they've made it already.
Drugs on which they're voting. And so RFK said, all right, it's enough of this nonsense, and hired 8 new independent experts who are unpaid, by the way.
And that means that they can't tell him that he can't be around. He can be wherever he wants to be. He's an unpaid volunteer. He's just here because he loves the government so much. I wonder who's taking care of his emus.
And some of them are associated with Brownstone. And of course, we're in the crosshairs. So I'm reading this nonsense in the mainstream media about me.
So we're supposed to believe that this guy is responsible for assembling an all-star team of academics who were dissidents during the COVID and has now given them stipends so that they can help save America.
Stop lying!
He's a fraud. This guy's a fraud. This guy has lawyers on Brownstone payroll like Bobby Ann Cox, who can't even say the words strict scrutiny and explain what it means in the context of American law without freaking out and asking Mendenhall to come over, who also couldn't do it. These people are frauds right to my face. You know, the lawyers that just lost the case for Grace Shara? Yes, those lawyers were at the Brownstone meeting in Pittsburgh in November of 2024, and I spoke to them before Robert Malone and Brett Weinstein got up on stage, and I asked them, why aren't we attacking the PrEP Act on the basis of it being unconstitutional? Because it doesn't hold the government to strict scrutiny when it's allowed to suspend fundamental rights using the declaration of the rational basis test alone on a non-elected official. And they stared at me with like the weirdest looks. And then Bobby Ann Cox, one of the fellows of Brownstone, said, hey, Mendenhall, can you come over here and talk to this guy? You know, the lawyer of Grace's dad, that guy. And he couldn't explain it either. He couldn't say anything. He didn't really know what I was talking. I got, he's smiling. I guess the talk is going to start. We got to find our seats.
Stop lying!
I think Grace Shara's case was sabotaged from the beginning. I don't think they ever intended to win. Otherwise, they would have been talking about the protocols in a much more precise way. I honestly think they were sabotaged. And I think there are going to be other cases in America that are being sabotaged, set up to fail so that the court precedence is set and the clock is essentially run out on all of the people who were murdered in America.
About Brownstone, of our work, and none of it is correct. It's all just silly. I don't know who's writing those articles, but I know on whose behalf they're writing the articles, which is their advertisers, who, you know, are inevitably the pharmaceutical companies that previously paid the old ACEP members. In other words, the corruption and, you know, the quid pro quos, the system, it's so obvious to me now. It just gets tiresome, as does the rhetoric, as do the brutal attacks and that sort of thing. So it's maddening, truly.
It's tiresome. It is tiresome, but we are curing your Gelman amnesia. I think I explained to you once before what this is, right? And the cure to Gelman amnesia, the surest cure is to have a print media outlet, particularly newspaper, particularly a major, write an article about you. then you will realize how far from the truth they stray. And trust me, just because they're writing it about you, you're not the only subject.
They're having a blast. They love this. This has been a very lucrative little thing for them to have done. I'm going to stand up. This has been a very lucrative thing for them to have done. So make no mistake about it. I'm just trying to watch cords so they don't get stuck on something. Sorry. Make no mistake about it. These people are... Did it stop? Is it stuck on something? Could go a little higher. Oh no, I think that's stuck on something. Yes, there we go. I could go a little higher. There we go. Yeah, so these guys are on a script provided by Robert Malone. That's why they're so happy. That's why they're performing the way they are, because it to them, it appears like it's exactly on plan. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is at the Health and Human Services Secretary. Robert Malone has predicted and successfully gotten Jay Bhattacharya in at NHS, and they have this UK citizen guy at the head of the FDA, just like they were told would happen. And so they're very happy to see that things are going well and that this is on plan. That's why they're so excited. I'm going to see if I can get to the gym with my boys before it gets too hot. And I thank you very much for being here. I hope you have a great weekend. I probably will not be online over the weekend, even though I always feel as though I should be. I'm trying to get in the habit of recovering on the weekend and focusing on contributing something to the parenting of my children, which I often don't do in the mornings during the week. But I will be back for 5 days a week again next week. The habit is there now. It's built in. So I think we're going to be able to create a better and better schedule and pivot slowly again, like we tried to do a couple months ago, from reporting exclusively on the show and instead try to move on to teaching some of this basic biology, trying to debunk virology in a systematic way and teach you the biology that edifies that position. So anyway, without any more stuttering, thank you very much. Have a happy Friday. I can't thank all of my supporters enough. The small ones that are giving me $10 a month, that matters. And the people that are giving me more than that, it definitely matters. A couple of you know that you're the only people that really keep this thing afloat. So altogether, it's really like 150 of us. So if you are here regularly and a part of this and share it in any way, then you are a part of that group as well. And I can't thank you enough for your efforts. But please make sure there are efforts. Please make sure that you're not just casually on the sideline cheering me on. I need you guys to take action. I need you to send links to people. I need you to share my PeerTube. I need you to share my my website, and I need you to try and learn this stuff yourself so that you can better teach it yourself. Thanks very much for being here, and I'll see you again next week.